People take wrong
transformations can
terms.
go in any direction, right? And
You're
so
right.
people transform in a direction that's not fruitful or helpful. The good
Think-
question is, how do you know?
Well, I think either way, even if someone else thinks you moved into a wrong place, you would still think it was good. Here's an example.
Okay.
You get divorced, now you're a hoe.
Oh,
You think that's a good place. Hey guys, welcome back to the Push Podcast. This is an exciting day. This is episode 200.
I know this is super exciting. Welcome back. I am EC in the place to be.
Are you?
And some things never change, homie.
Oh,
made that.
I hate your rapping. Hate it.
You hate my rapping?
I do. I'm sorry. Listen, this episode is special to us. When we started this podcast, it was October 2019.
Jeez.
So long ago.
Right.
And it is now July 2023, and so much has changed in our lives. Would you agree?
100%.
So in this episode, we're going to reflect on the journey. Everyone tells you all the time, you got to reflect on the journey and enjoy the journey along the way.
Yep.
And that's so cliche, but I think it's true.
Well, why is it cliche?
Because like nobody wants to be in the journey, in the grind. Like if you're building a business, you're raising kids, like you go through tough seasons.
Right.
You're literally building a business, building a podcast. Like you launch the podcast in the beginning and you're like, is anyone ever going to listen to this?
Right.
It turns out thousands of you do. So that's really exciting, but it's been a journey. So in this episode, we're going to be reflecting on that. And I think we're going to share some things. One about like our transformation and our growth and who we are today, but also we're going to share some things that are going to be relatable for the audience, because I think this episode I'd like to invite you to go back and look at your own journey. Like, who are you today in 2023 versus who you were in 2019? And if you don't look back at your old self and say, oh my God, that person's not even recognizable, then you're listening to the right the right podcast, because that's really what this podcast is all about.
Well, hopefully you turn into a really good person.
Like, well, yeah. I hope I didn't turn into a shitty person.
Hey, transformations can go in any direction, right?
You're
so
right.
people can transform in a direction that's not fruitful or helpful. We hope that you've moved into a better place. The good question is, how do you know?
Well, I think either way, even if someone else thinks you moved into a wrong place, you would still think it was good. Here's an example.
Okay.
You get divorced, now you're a hoe. You think that's a good place, but
others
now
may have a different perspective on it.
Your kids might be like, okay, my mom is wilding out now. She thinks she's young again. Yeah, maybe because she was so busy raising your little asses, and now she wants to have fun, right?
Yeah. So
that's an example of you're probably an entirely different person. Some would debate whether that was a better place or not, but
And it's interesting because
that
is a really good perspective, because when you think about like growth and transformation, not everyone's going to agree with your growth.
No.
Not everyone's going to recognize and respect your transformation.
Right.
And so you have to find some way of measuring whether you're moving forward and progressing in life, or are you moving backwards, right?
Yeah.
Are you expanding your perspective and your growth and your knowledge and your understanding of the world, or are you retracting into a narrow perspective and narrow view? Like whatever it is, you got to find a way to measure it.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think like in 2023 versus 2019, like doing less, I don't think that's a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
We live in an era of overwork and overwhelm. And so maybe you're like, hey, people are thinking that I'm lazier now or I'm meaner now because I established better boundaries. That would be another example of you're a different person. Maybe people don't think you're growing in the right way, but maybe for you, you are growing in a way that feels good for the season that you're in.
Right.
Maybe you've been a parent and you've said yes and sacrificed your whole life, and now your kids are older and you're like, nah, I'm not going to watch your kids.
Yeah.
It's not my responsibility to watch your kids. I watched you, I raised you, and it's your turn now to figure out how to struggle with, childcare.
Yeah.
I'm here for that.
Do you think that your outcomes or your results make the difference? And what I mean by that is like, sometimes you look back on whether your parents, you look back on individuals that were significant in your life, right? And maybe they did something that rubbed you the wrong way. You didn't understand it. You maybe thought they were mean. You thought they were brash. But when you find out and you realize the things that they've accomplished, you go, oh, I get why they were that way because they were focused. I
Yeah.
get why they were that way because they had boundaries. They wanted to make sure that they controlled their
Mm-hmm.
time. I didn't like it because it didn't benefit me. However, what they created was something significant.
Well, yes. There were things that my parents did that I was like, that's a shitty thing to do.
That's a shitty piece of
But
news.
but I do think that as I became a parent, there were several moments that clicked and I was like, "Oh, this is why my mom beat our ass." Like she was trying to establish,
Right.
rules. She was
Uh-huh.
trying to show you like I'm not to be fucked with, right?
Right.
Did I think it was a way that was favorable? Probably not at the
Right.
time, but I would be lying if I said that there weren't many moments through our raising of children that I was like, oh, I should have beat their asses.
Mm.
Like, then we wouldn't be in this situation. We
Right.
had really good kids, but there were times that they made decisions and I was like, oh, we fucked them up.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's
But it clicks for you when you become a parent. And
right.
so I'm really looking forward for the day when our kids become parents and then it starts clicking and they're like, oh my God, I got a caller. Like I
Right.
totally get it now. Like I didn't get it then, but I'm so thankful.
And it's funny because when you think about that from a parenting standpoint, you don't want to be. We always talk about you don't want to be best friends with your kids
Mhm.
because it's not a popularity contest.
Right.
And when you think about business and leadership, I tell leaders all the time, like, don't be a vain leader,
Mhm.
right? If you are constantly concerned with your vanity, like people liking you,
Likability.
you're liking you,
Mhm.
it's going to interrupt you actually getting things done and
Right.
helping them, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't know of a way that you can help someone grow without rubbing them the wrong way, without
Right.
being completely honest with them. That in some places will be painful, right? And so I think those are all things that you look back and you say, I get it now because it was for my best interest, but I
Yeah.
didn't get it then.
Yeah.
And so as you progress and you accomplish things, like we're at 200 episodes, there are a lot of things we had to say no to so that we can say yes to this, right?
Mhm.
And maybe that was time with the kids, whatever that may be. But we hope to see that this impacts and helps people as we have, like, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the responses we've gotten from people that, encourages us.
Yeah. So I put together a couple of questions like for us to just kind of reflect. And then this episode will help you if you're brand new to the Push Podcast. Welcome.
Welcome.
Maybe you've been here since day one and you forgot that we had 200 amazing episodes prior to this. So we're going to kind of list some of our favorites, some fan favorites, and then some that we just think are really good episodes.
Right.
And then we're going to talk to you about what we're going to be doing in the next 200 episodes.
Right.
So starting with question 1, like reflecting on personal transformations, share some personal stories and personal transformations from maybe our journey. We could highlight some key moments, some challenges that we had in our lives over the last few years. So we're talking 2019, 2021, 22, 23. That's 5 years it took us to do 200 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you go back and you listen to the original Push Podcast, episode number 1, and this was funny, I did it around episode 123 because we had some new neighbors that moved in and they were like, oh, I heard you have a podcast. What's it about? I said, well, go listen to episode 1 and you'll know a little bit about us. And then I was like, wait, we're on 123 and
Right.
it had been a couple of years. So I listened to episode 1 and I was like, oh, we don't have small kids anymore.
Right.
We're not juggling 2 businesses. We're not in that season of hustle and grind in that respect, but we have a whole new set of challenges in, years later after that.
Yeah.
So I would say today, I think it's a good idea to tell the listeners, like we are still parents of 3 kids, but our kids are getting ready to be 22, 20, and 18.
Yeah.
And 2 of them are going to be living in another country for college. And then Jasmine, our oldest, is graduating like tomorrow from college. So
Right.
she's like entering the adult world. And so shifting gears from being the parent to now you play a different role when you have
Right.
adult children. It's more of a listener. It's more of kind of an idea bouncer offer, not so much a direction giver.
Right.
And that's a huge challenge for a lot of parents that we're trying to be the best we can and kind of navigate through. So maybe if you're a listener and you are an empty nester, like we're getting ready to be empty nesters. Jordan, our youngest, is going to be moving to London to go to college. And so we'll be moving her out of the house in the next few weeks. And that's going to be a whole new season for us. So if you have tips for us on being an empty nester, definitely hit us up.
Yeah. And I think, if you go back and you listen to, I think we try to do a really good job. And I'm sure in the next 200 episodes, we will touch on some of the things that we learned raising kids and thinking about where they are right now and kind of where it started. It makes you look back and say, wow, we did really good with this. Oh, that was a parenting micro failure right there. Oh, that was a bigger failure. Oh, that was a win, right? And so hopefully we can provide perspective, because we know there's a lot of people that are parent experts, and I got quotation marks for people listening.
We are not those people.
We're not those people, but we know that people write books about parenting. Their kids are like 2.
I think you should not.
It's just like all theory.
Yeah, you should not listen to anyone who hasn't successfully raised a child all the way up to the age of 18.
Right. Unless you are a researcher. Hear me out. If you are, context matters, right? So we'll talk about this too a little bit. But if I'm a researcher and I have researched, let's say 200 parents and their kids, and I have all this data, and I'm comparing like what they did, and I followed these kids for X amount of years,
I'm gonna still say
you may have some insight that may be.
Yeah, you'll have some insight, but you're as a therapist or a researcher, you're still like the cool person, right? So the kid's gonna open up to you about stuff they wouldn't open up to their parents.
No, you're actually grabbing data from their real life. Like, you're not.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no. Okay. I'm gonna say no. If you haven't been in the grind, in the thick of it, you don't really know how to parent it. I mean, come for me. I don't know what to tell you. But if you haven't done it yourself, I could read 1,000,000 books on swimming. But if I've never swam myself, like, because I don't like water, I'm
100%.
not a good swimmer.
Yeah.
Period.
100. Yeah. And so I'm with you on that. Okay. I just think that there's.
Well, if you want some parenting tips and you want to hear about our journey, we have shared some of the micro failures. Right. We've shared some of the things we've been proud about. And we've given tons of parenting advice. So that would be episode 18, 4, and 92 are some that specifically stick out for me. So there you have that.
There you have it.
Okay, so who are you today that you were not in 2019?
Oh my God.
Are you more blank, blank, blank?
I am. God, I think I'm more open to taking on different challenges. Mm-hmm. Than I think I probably was in 2019. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because when I look back from 2019 through, I call it the COVID era, there were a lot of things that just stepped into nervously, not knowing if I was going to be good at it. And I think you get into those moments where you say, wow, I actually felt myself rise to the occasion. And so I think that that never gets old. Yeah. I hope to say that again, in 5 years from now, of saying, wow, I'm even a more risk taker because I believe in myself.
I think you're right. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's like a graduation.
Think that I'm prepared for anything.
Okay.
Like, there have been some things that have happened in the last few years, some things that we're still kind of working through. So they say you're supposed to share from your scars and not your wounds.
Right.
So some things we're not ready to share, right? From a personal perspective. But I think that, like, at one point I was like, okay, God, do you think this is funny? Because I mean, I totally appreciate your humor in like all of the stuff you're doing in my life, but can we distribute some of these problems and some of this stuff? And I think that now I go, I could literally probably make it through anything.
Yeah.
And so I think I've built more confidence and resilience.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay.
Congratulations.
Lessons learned and some wisdom gained that maybe some impactful lessons that were things you weren't looking for, you weren't looking to gain, but you maybe learned the hard way. Anything stand out for you?
I wasn't looking to learn the hard way. I think understanding that trial and error, like doing certain things and them not working and
Yes.
then changing course. I think, you go through 200 episodes, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and you think, oh, this is the episode that is going to like
Yep.
knock people's socks off, and people are like, ah.
Yeah.
And then you throw an episode out there where you're just loose and having fun, and people are like, that was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that like not necessarily always understanding what's going to work, but showing up every single day matters.
Yep.
Right. And so that's also important. And I think that
So
we
consistency.
And I also think that like context matters. Right. I heard this
I think it does. That's the second time you've said that.
when
I don't know. You said it earlier.
today.
Yeah. About
Oh
the
yeah.
therapist.
Yes.
That's your quote of the episode.
Right, my quote of-
Context matters.
And it does, because I was reading this book and it said if you saw flowers in a meadow,
Mhm.
right, and there was tons of flowers, right, you'd go, oh, there's flowers, right? But if you see that same single beautiful flower, on a casket, it means something totally
Oh,
different.
Jesus.
I know. You see how you just changed?
Okay.
Same flower, different place, different
Mhm.
context.
Mhm.
The whole world changes, right? You see that same beautiful flower being presented to you because it's on a Valentine's
Because
Day.
you're asking me to marry you.
Right. Totally different
Mhm.
context. We talk about a lot of things on this podcast. And I think that one of the things that I learned is that we have to make sure we give context.
Yep.
Because if the context is not there, it may not resonate with people the right
Mm.
way. And so we can't worry about how people receive it because we can't control that. But what we can do is try to create a context that helps people really understand what we're saying. So I learned that through this process as
Do
well.
you think we didn't provide context?
I don't think I thought about it intentionally.
Okay.
Right. I don't think I necessarily thought, okay, how do we, and you do this really well.
I think all I care about is context.
Right. Well, I think you think about like, okay, what is the title, which gives it the context of
Right.
whatever this conversation may be, which I think I grow to understand that how
Yeah.
that plays a huge part and how that matters. But I also think that, we live in a world where everything is out of context.
Mhm.
Everything. Like
Because you're taking clips.
you're taking
for
clips of
Reels
things,
and
right?
TikToks.
Right. And
Mhm.
so like even we post clips of different episodes,
Mhm.
and it will resonate with people depending on their context,
Yeah.
right? Because they're not probably listening to the whole episode,
Yeah.
right? And so
like the episode where you called the police on me
right. And so
for and scared the shit out of me. And in the episode clip that we shared, I was sharing like how I was upset with you and I was scared, and people in the little 30-second TikTok clip were like, this lady's a bitch. Like
Right.
her husband just cared about her. Shame
Right.
on her. I was like, okay, you know none of the context, but okay.
Right. And so I think in our episodes, I think the hard work for us is saying, okay, what's the context so
Mhm.
that whatever this topic is, it resonates for people that need it most for this particular situation, right? And so I think that those are things I kind of learned to pick up.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't put out an episode. I don't green light an episode unless I think through who's this going to resonate with.
Mhm.
And what I've learned through 200 episodes is that nothing's unique. Like
Mhm.
everyone, when you're in the thick of something, you think that it's so unique to you, it's so unique to
Mm.
your life, and nobody understands. And so you think that everyone needs context of why your situation is so bad. And I'm just going to tell you, we're all the same people. Like we're
Mm.
all experiencing the same thing. And so we're all going to go through the same obstacles in life, whether that's death, raising children, figuring out how to navigate through communication issues. You want to participate and contribute in healthy relationships, whether those are with your partner or your friendships. And I think that our audience has really resonated with a lot of the things that we've shared that have been our challenges. And so whether it's about like rejection, we've got 2 daughters that are actors. We talk
Yeah.
about rejection a lot. Like I'm an entrepreneur. There's lots of rejection when it comes to that. So if you want to hear about rejection, go listen to episode 23. Lots of people struggle with confidence, right?
Right.
You want to listen to something to boost your confidence, go listen to 64 and 79. We've talked about insecurities. We've talked about self-sabotage. We've talked about comparison. We've talked about imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud. Like lots of these topics people relate to in some capacity.
Yeah.
And
And-
I think that that's a great reason to listen to the Push podcast. But that really tells me that like nothing's really uncommon because we're all struggling through something in whatever season we're in.
And I think that what ends up happening sometimes too, you rattled off a few titles or numbers of episodes. And because we've talked about imposter syndrome, confidence, like all these things, which we'll continue to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we change the context because
Mm-hmm.
people are that way, right? Where they feel like if it doesn't match my
Right.
circumstances completely, then I don't make the connection,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I need it to be exactly my context or my
Mm-hmm.
situation for me to really receive it. And so we will have different episodes. I think that we change the context a bit so you see how it shows up,
Yeah.
right? Because imposter syndrome, we know that women recognize that and they see it in themselves, but men sometimes don't see it. But you change the context and they go, "Oh yeah, I felt that way before," and
Right.
but now you go, "Oh, that's the same thing,"
I think
right?
women call it imposter syndrome, and men just are like, yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, I just did it. Yeah. Was I scared? Yeah. Did I know what I was doing? Absolutely not. And then through the context of the conversation, they're like, oh, that's what that's called.
Right.
And so I think it's relatable.
Right. And
Yeah.
for example, like men will use ego to kind of like put out there because they
mask it.
to mask it,
Mhm.
right? And until you speak to it specifically, they may not necessarily resonate and go, "Oh, I don't ever feel
Yeah.
that way," until you say, when you do this, you pump your chest out, you do all these different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're actually protecting yourself from imposter syndrome because you
Yeah.
don't feel like you belong.
Mm-hmm. That's like when you mansplain things to me. Like,
I never mansplain
you
things to
do.
you.
We were talking about something golf related the other day. And I was like, oh, yeah, when you are shooting, hitting the ball with your longer clubs, you're not supposed to be center. You're supposed to be off center. And you were like, well, no, your leg's supposed to be slightly to the left. And Jordan overheard and she goes, so you mean off center? And you go, well, I wouldn't say off center. I would just say that it's slightly to the, I was like, okay. You are literally mansplaining exactly what I just said.
I don't recall that conversation.
Well, that's your
whatsoever.
imposter syndrome. No, but it's just a funny thing to think of. Another example of like context or relatability would be when we talk about business things, starting your own business or, trying to pursue a side hustle and turn it into something bigger. Lots of people are like, I'm not going to listen to those episodes because I don't have a business. Like,
Right.
I had a friend tell me that. Well, if you talk about business on the podcast, I don't listen. And I go, well, you should, because you're making t-shirts with your Cricut and you're selling them to friends and family for pennies and you're losing money. And so if you just want to cover the cost of your supplies, you should probably go listen to those episodes, right?
I love that point because I want to keep going.
I was just going to say, we did episodes, how to start a business of any kind right now. That's episode 67. Go listen to 89, 90, 106, 121. Those are really great business episodes.
So I want listeners to understand this. Like, one of the key measurements of intelligence is your ability to recognize patterns, right?
Okay.
And what that means is that I can watch a movie, listen to a podcast, read a book, and find the connections in all those things and apply something to my life in a really practical way that I can execute at a high level. And so I recognize the pattern. So when people shut themselves off to things that they don't think that they're related to, they're missing the opportunity to take something that's not related to, maybe it's about business, but you're looking for something related to a relationship where you can find the connection there that says, oh, wow, you're saying to me like making connections in business is no different than building a relationship with a person that you may have, a relationship with
Right.
long term with. Like there's something in there I can pull, and that ability to recognize that is a measurement of intelligence, which is super important. And so for all people that are listening, if you see a title that you think, oh, it doesn't relate to me because I don't own a business, or it doesn't relate to me because I'm not married, or it doesn't relate to me because I don't have kids, you're missing an opportunity to pull something that you can actually say, oh, this actually relates to this thing, right? And because it relates to that, I can actually use this information. That is super important because we do this all the time.
Yeah.
We'll watch something and it has nothing to do, and I'm constantly thinking to myself, oh, this is perfect for work. Oh, this is perfect for the business, right? And so I think that those are things that are underestimated.
Yeah. I think family and parenting tips, like we pull a lot from the Kardashians. Like not in the way that you think, but
Right.
like we'll pause a lot and be like, wow, like they're under scrutiny for everything
Right.
from lip injections to you lost too much weight too quick to, the look of your kids, whatever. We'll pause it and we'll be like, okay, so we have two kids that are actors. What are you going to do when everyone has an opinion about your life? So
Right.
I think that skill is a really big strength for both of us. We're not super religious, but if we go to church because we were invited or on Easter or Christmas or something, we will be the people taking notes in the audience
Yeah.
because maybe there was a message that was shared that maybe I don't necessarily care about the scripture verse or whatever, but there is something that's relatable to life that I can apply that lesson to and become a better person.
Yeah.
And I will just say this lastly, when I was building my baking business, I never once went to a baking conference to learn from other bakers. I would go to real estate conferences. I would go to food and beverage or hospitality conferences, technology conferences, blogging conferences. I went to every other kind of industry conference because I still learned a ton about being a business owner or being a leader in a business, capacity that helped me. And so I find it really odd when people
Yeah.
can't pull from someone else's experiences and make it relatable for themselves. So
Yeah.
I'm co-signing for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
We've had some people leave some really great reviews and tell us how the Push podcast has impacted them. We're hoping that for episode 200 through 400, if we have shared anything that's resonated with you, that's helped you in life, that you can take a few moments and just head over to iTunes and let us know through a review, a 5-star review, thank you, what we've shared that has benefited your life in any way, if possible. We would appreciate that.
And this one's from Samir Music. Shout out to Samir Music. Said, this podcast saved my life. Eddie and Janelle have both been such an instrumental part of my growth personally and professionally. I am so grateful they started this podcast, started listening when I was in a time in my life where I needed to change my habits, because I look forward to the Tuesday mornings. And the podcast definitely helps push me through my week. So I think that that's super, super special.
That's great. I got a message. I know you have another one, but I got a message from one of our students who also listens to the podcast. And just the other day, she said, I just wanted to share this victory with you. I haven't been under 200 pounds since 2009. I want to thank you so much. My journey started during the very first coaching call that I took. She was one of our students for starting a business. And funny enough, she's not in that business anymore. Like she learned life skills from us that helped her see the type of life she wanted to live. And so she went through a divorce. She went through a body transformation. She went through a career change, all because she took a business course with us and listens to the podcast. And so she said, your words and encouragement over the last several years have meant so much to me. And I hear them every time I'm feeling down on myself. I hope you know the impact that you have on the world and women in your tribe. It goes a long way past all of your advice.
I love that.
And these are people that have become friends now because maybe you started just with the Push podcast. I had someone message me the other day, hey, I listen to the podcast. I follow your business tips. I'm going to be in LA. Can we meet? And I was like, okay, I'm going to be out of town, but that's great. Thank you so much. So a lot of them have become friends and we're in contact with them. So thank you so much. If you've ever taken the time to write a review or slide into our DMs, you can go to the Push podcast on Instagram or TikTok, and we would love to hear from you.
Yeah. And it's funny because when I talk to people, I know I can tell that they are talking back to us. Like, you listen to something and like you have your own commentary, like you want to add something to it. And so I think that was a big part of, us changing the intro to like, talking about like we're the friends that are going to be the ones that push you through.
Yeah.
Because that's what we want. Right. And the goal is that we have content that, resonates with you and hopefully sparks to change something. We talked in many episodes before about disturbances, right? And so things in your life that, externally disturb you and cause chaos in your life, but it creates the change or a change reaction that you need. We hope that maybe you don't have to go through something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe the podcast could be a disturbance where you hear something and it resonates and there's a perspective that says, oh my God, I got to change this thing. I got to go on a diet. I need to lose weight. I need to get healthier. I need to leave this person that I'm with. So I think those things are super, super special to hear.
Yeah. And I think that, we've talked about like money on the podcast before, right? Like that just kind of sparks something like a struggle with money might be something that you're going through. We had to go through those hard challenges in order to be grateful for the money that we have today.
Right.
So if money is of importance to you, go listen to 101, 120, and 166. I just think there's so many great topics that we've covered. And if I look at, I know you have another review, but if I look at the reviews and the feedback we've got, one of the main consistent messages is, you're just so relatable. I can't believe that you're sharing the same struggles that I'm going through. And I think that's what makes the podcast authentic and worthwhile of listening to.
Yeah, for sure. So this next message is from ERMD. So this is a person that is a physician.
I love it.
And a baker, which is super awesome. Says exactly what I needed is the title. 5-star, by the way. Janelle and Eddie, you are great. I agree. I so needed to hear this message on visualization, manifestation, and particularly the importance of the negative messages that we tell ourselves. I am a physician and a baker. I am in the process of setting my goals for my new small business and appreciate your advice. So, and then she goes on to talk about how, I guess you were talking about taking Benadryl and it was, causing you to stay up all night. So she was talking about the effects of that. I don't know if you read that.
Dang.
Yeah, she said energy, anxiety, nervousness, and angst can be something that can affect you. So no Benadryl before bed.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know when you mentioned that. Well,
the funny thing is NyQuil is that's what
gets you.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Benadryl will knock me out. NyQuil will keep me up all night. I'll be hallucinating all night, and it has like an adverse effect.
And there you go.
Yeah. If you want to dream bigger, though, we've got a ton of episodes on dreaming bigger and kind of coming up with your dream life. One of my favorite episodes is 82. There's another one, Creating an Awesome Life with Sal, who was Sal Blinkoff.
Yeah.
He was one of our guests, and he was episode 97. We did, speaking of guests, we've had Anthony Trucks on the podcast a lot. He hangs out with like the Brendan Burchards and the Jay Shettys of the world. Anthony Trucks help you shift your perspective. His thing's shift and ours is push.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy, so go check him out. We've had Sweet Kate Bakes. She talked about confidence in business and she's really amazing. We even came across Eric Biggers, who's one of the Bachelorette finalists. He was like second to winning the Bachelorette. He was a fun guy to have on. We've had some manifestation people. Julia Counselor, she's a therapist. She was on. So we've had some cool guests, but I think between the next like 100 episodes, we're going to find some really amazing people that are going to help take maybe some of the things we're struggling with and help give us all advice. Yeah.
And, so I can't wait for that. But it's interesting because we've had many amazing guests.
I already know where you're going with this.
But the fan favorite is the good old dad, Mr. Craig Coley.
Who likes to go by Dr. Dino. He's not a doctor of anything, you guys.
So for whatever reason, his episodes go through the roof.
Yep.
People love him.
Because he's so inappropriate.
I don't know if he's been as inappropriate as he can.
He's not. His real life inappropriateness is nothing compared to what he's done on the podcast.
Right. So
thanks for doing that, Dad.
Yeah. So we know that he is.
He's a fan favorite.
He's a fan favorite for sure.
What about some behind the scenes like insight? I'll start with this, and that is people tell me all the time, "Oh, I want to start a podcast," and I go, "Here's the best advice I could give you: start the podcast for yourself." Come up with a title, figure out who you want to speak to, what makes you the expert, and then come up with 100 titles.
Yeah.
And then come up with a schedule of when you're going to record them at the same time every single week and see if you can do that for 100 episodes.
Yeah.
And immediately to go, oh, that sounds terrible. I'm like,
Well, that's reality.
That's the problem is people
Right.
start podcasts because they think they got so much to say. But when it comes to like breaking down an outline or figuring out a title, like people don't just want to hear you talk. They want to tune in weekly because maybe they're growing with you. Maybe they're relating to something that you're going through or a challenge that you're giving them step-by-step advice to get through. There has to be a reason for you doing the podcast other than the fact that you think you got some shit to say. Because if you think
Right.
that it's easy to get through 200 episodes, that's over a 5-year period. I'm just going to tell you, it's a lot harder than you think.
Right. And we do these in a stream of consciousness. Like there is no editing.
No.
There's no, oh, I messed up on that part.
Nope.
This is, you get the raw uncut. Like if we fumble a word, use a word wrong, mispronounce.
Wrong.
Exactly. Right. It stays in.
Yeah.
Like there's no cleaning up.
There's a lot of podcasts that do clean up.
Oh yeah. I'm telling you, your favorite podcasts out there right now.
Yeah.
They edit those suckers. Right. And so, which is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
some are really good produced. You
Right.
know who's produced podcast I really love? Meghan Markle's. She's got a podcast called Archetypes, and it's very into like storytelling. It's highly produced, but I think it's a great concept for a show. She doesn't do like 200 episodes straight. She does, here's a season 1.
Right.
Here's 10 episodes. We'll see you next year in season 2. So that's like not even one a month.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're doing one every single Tuesday.
Yeah.
That's a lot of shit to say.
Yeah. We love
That's
y'all.
a lot of consistency. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of team resources. It's a lot of sharing. It's a lot of growing ourselves.
Yeah.
It's a lot of figuring out, what's worthwhile of talking about. And so I would just say, if you want to do anything, you want to start a podcast, you want to start a blog, you want to get on social media, the best thing you can do is figure out who your tribe is, who are you trying to attract, what messages will resonate with them, and then come up with 30 to 100 titles. And if you can do that and that still excites you and you're still like geeked up about it, then you should do it.
Yeah. And I will tell you this. One of the things that I appreciate with the podcast is that because we're constantly thinking about like what are we going to talk about? What do people need? It makes me pay attention to the world, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to be super aware of what I'm experiencing, how I'm feeling, what I'm seeing. And, in that we get some some interesting moments in life, right? Because I'm paying attention and I'm like, wow, can you believe this just happened? And so sometimes they turn into what in the world, right? And so we do a what in the world segment where we talk about the crazy things, which we have a lot of what in the worlds to talk about because, we took a couple weeks off. But those are things I think that I appreciate with the podcast is because it makes me super hyper conscious of like, okay, what's going on here? Is there something here? And I found this really funny clip with Seinfeld, and he was like, people were asking him like, do you have like, how do you get material? He goes, every situation, every part of my life is material. He goes, so do you have an authentic relationship? He goes, no, I don't have any authentic relationships. All of my relationships are about, can I get material from this? Right. And he's a comedian, but it was funny, but it was like, yeah, you kind of like, there are the times where you're like, oh, I wonder if I could talk about this. Right.
Well, that's kind of a fun fact about us and the Push podcast is there is so much content that we want to share with you, but we have to constantly put it through a filter of, would this person want to be talked about on the podcast? Is it going to hurt our relationship with this person? And I usually am the one to say no. And Eddie's like, nah, if they don't listen to it, they're free for all. You literally are like, this will be helpful to more people than it will hurt the one person.
Yeah, they'll get over it. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just, it's just words.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. So wrapping it up, what are you looking forward to in the next kind of season? I don't think our next season's going to be 200 episodes, but in the next season, so episodes 201 through 220, let's say,
right.
What are you promising people? What can they hope to get?
I think they can hope to continue to get really great perspectives from us. I think that I look forward to inviting some guests on that really take our podcast to another level, give us their expertise, whether they're experts in their field or interesting people. I think that that's something to look forward to. I think that our just being real, you can count on that. Like, we'll have fun with the podcast. We'll do things that we think that are funny,
Yep.
right, and share things that are humorous. But also, I think we'll just continue to show up at a high level,
Yeah.
right?
Agree. We've got lots of friends getting married
Yeah,
and starting families like in their 40s. I think that's bananas, you guys. But, everybody's life is different. And so it's interesting to see that we're in our 40s and our parenting days are coming to an end. And some of our kids, some of our friends are actually just starting that journey. So that's interesting. Again, we're managing through like adult relationships now. We're trying to figure out what the next 20 years of our marriage is going to look like. We're trying to figure out how to potentially pivot our business because there's so many different ideas. The funny thing, I didn't even share this with you, but I woke up the other day and I told Jordan, I think I'm going to become like an esthetician, maybe even a physician's assistant, which is basically a doctor in the next few years, because as I age, how cool would it be if I learned all the stuff that there is to know about skincare? What if I became like a master injector and I did my own Botox and like other women? And then Jordan's like, yeah, mom. And as we get older, you can do ours too. Like, I'd rather get it done from my mom than someone else. So I talked to my sister, Jessica, who's a nurse, and I was like, what do you think? And she's like, oh, we could rock a practice like that. So it's just something fun. And what I'm learning in this stage of my life is the time's going to pass either way.
yeah,
I may as well educate myself. I may as well be open to new career opportunities, new industries that I don't know anything about. And so I hope that that's what we inspire you to do. I hope that if you've been in the same job for the last 10 years, you continue to listen to the Push podcast and maybe inspires you to say, I'm not really fulfilled in the way that I was with this career 10 years ago, and I'm in a new season. And so let me explore some new options. I think that that's what you'll be getting from the Push podcast is like, maybe you're not going through everything that we're going through, but I think when we go back and reflect on starting a business or having children at a young age or struggling financially or closing my bakery and quitting after, I was really successful doing something, but knowing that there was a shift. We talked the other day, we're starting to golf together. That's a whole what in the world I'll save for the next episode, you guys. But as we get older, we're like, what are some things and hobbies that we can have together as a couple to kind of re-spark our, excitement and hobbies with each other, because we're not going to have kids anymore.
right.
Luckily, we really like each other, though.
Yeah, I think you're pretty cool.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think you're cool too. But I know a lot of couples that are struggling with that. So I can promise that we'll be talking about some things that we think are imperative to having a healthy relationship or marriage. And we're just going to continue to share from an authentic place. And I'm excited that you guys are here. Please, we've never really asked you in a formal way, but if you like this podcast, please start sharing it with your friends and family and people you think would benefit from it. We're trying to grow it. We're trying to stay consistent for the next 200 episodes, and we need your help to spread the word. And last thing I'll say is, you go to work every day and you get to interact with people. People are constantly stopping you and saying, oh my God, I loved that episode. This was so good. I shared it with such and such. And I don't get that because I work from home and I don't have coworkers. I'm not interacting with the public anymore. And so that's why I need you guys to leave a review.
This is for Janelle, y'all.
Yeah, literally, if I start to question, like, are people even listening to this? He's like, okay, number one, the data's up. Our listener subscriptions are up. And two, I get told constantly that it's helpful. And so I need to be told that it's helpful too.
Yeah. It's so funny. I mean, I know we're going to wrap up, but you mentioned like exploring different avenues, educating and stuff like that. And it's interesting because when we, in our episode, I forgot the number, we talked about AI. I mean, we freaked some people out. Like,
really?
People,
is that the feedback you
oh
got?
my God, people were so freaked out about AI, and job loss and the disruption it's going to create. And so I think one of the things that's going to be really important as we go through the next 200 episodes is illuminating these things more and more for people that are not paying
Yeah.
attention to tech news
Yep.
necessarily. And so if we can find different ways to continue to share like what's happening in the world that we're interested in, which a lot of tech stuff and stuff like that, where if you get the right perspective, maybe it prepares you for something that may really change your lifestyle and even your work,
Yep.
or give you an idea that you can turn into a business. Because in the next 5 to 10 years, we don't know what the careers are
Yeah.
going to be, right? And so it's hard to even tell with your kids what to go to school for,
Yeah.
right? And so that's one of the things I think to also anticipate with the Push podcast as well.
Agree. And just to kind of tag team on that, like we walked into Uniqlo, it's a clothing store, the other day.
Yeah.
And all you do is dump your clothes in there with the hangers and everything. You hit start, and within less than 2 seconds, it's like your total is 173.47.
That's so strange.
And Jasmine was like, "How did it do that?" And I'm like, "Well, we don't need cashiers anymore because we have technology that does this." And we saw that years ago in Scotland, in the
Yeah.
UK. And so I think that when we were kids, you wanted to get a summer job, you go to the mall. Guess what? Malls are not going to exist in the next 5
Right.
years. They're just, the traffic is down. People are not going. They shop in different ways. Movie theaters will probably not be around in the next 5 years.
Or they'll be different.
Totally different
Right.
experiences. And so I think we have to be really aware of that. And I think that listening to a podcast like this will help give you some insight into stuff that, like you said, maybe you're not actively looking for, but if we have conversations about the changing world and how great it can be instead of the doom and gloom, I think it'll be helpful. So
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you for sharing, liking, commenting on all of our stuff. And we will see you in the next few hundred episodes.
And
Take care.
And like always, push through.